about what the fact that you believe that Doug Marrone is good despite the national media criticism. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. And I'm a real big Doug Marrone fan. If this was a wrestling conversation, I'd be considered a mark. Doug Marrone is the kind of guy you want to play for. He's the coach. He's a player's coach. He's played the game. He's likable. He's very charismatic, and he is able to identify with his players. And I don't know to what degree and what level, because I know that there are different personalities in the locker room and whatnot. But he's weathered quite a bit of a storm here in Jacksonville this year. He came in knowing that he was on a short leash. They were 5-11 last year. He had to win, and the front office knew that they had to produce as well. They lost their first two games. They lost an $88 million quarterback, bring in a rookie. Oh, and yeah, by the way, that guy named Ramsey caused a few problems for them, where there was more attention being paid to the Jalen Ramsey saga. People kind of tend to forget that the Jaguars had to play football games.
Right.
And here was Doug Marrone, as we've talked about, who's answering questions every week to the local media of what's going to happen, and he can't answer those questions because it's a management issue. It's not a coaching issue. So Marrone is still preparing his team for Carolina and Denver and Cincinnati and all these things, and the outside news and the minutia, so we call it that, was still going on, and he's still holding the team together. And then Ramsey gets traded, and it's almost like everybody exhaled.
Right.
And the defense is better, and the players are playing better, and they're talking about unity and playing with each other, and the love they have for each other. All of that is Doug Marrone.
Right.
I think people miss that in all of this.
Well, I mean, I could agree with you. I mean, I work with him too. When I'm up there, plus the draft, I've gotten to know Doug quite well over the last couple of years. He's one of the most down-to-earth guys I've ever seen, and he's very polite. He answers the questions as honestly as he's able to do it. And I think he's the type of guy that's not comfortable being the forefront of all the questions, but knows it's part of the job. So I agree with you. It seems like the players do like playing for him, and they'll work as hard as they can to make sure this guy stays their head coach, because the last thing you want is to bring in another guy to have to get used to, especially when you feel that the guy that is communicating effectively. And Doug does that, and I enjoy working with him. I really do. And, I'd like to see him go beyond this year, but we know full well it's a wins, losses kind of thing, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But, yeah, I definitely believe that Gardner Minshew is a down-to-earth guy in a small market like Jacksonville. They're certainly a good fit. We also realize there's an $88 million investment out of the pocket of Shad Khan. Whether that impacts it or not, I don't know. But you have until week 11, though, so it's not like that decision's going to be made tomorrow or anything. And you alluded to the fact that he's not ready to go ahead and deal with this until he has all the scenarios straight. So if you ever heard of the letters TBD, this is definitely what TBD stands for. So let's. Do
you remember when we were? I'm sorry.
Well, no, that's okay.
Do you remember when we were sitting there and we were discussing the scenarios? They were out on they were practicing for the game, and I know that there were some of us that were discussing who we thought we were gonna see play in week 11. And I said I really wanted to see Minshew, but I can give you 88 million reasons why that may not happen.
Right.
I don't know whether. I've never believed a player loses their position because of injury, but I also know that there is so much invested in Minshew mania with the fan base and the merchandise and his play and his mobility. And he's more mobile than Foles. Foles has a better arm and has more experience. It's a crapshoot, and I worry now that maybe the fan base gets upset that Minshew's not playing because he's a cult-like figure. I don't know that Foles has that same kind of persona. He's a really good guy, but he's also, he's more mature as far as experience, and he's a family man, and he's brought in, and he's the antithesis of everything that Blake Bortles was.
Right.
Gardner Minshew's the fun guy. Blake Bortles was a fun guy. People can identify with the fact that whether they liked him or hated him, Blake Bortles was a fun guy. Minshew's a fun guy that's winning. Foles is the guy that, although they really like the fact they brought him in, he wins. And he's proven that at the biggest stage.
All right, let me go on to a couple interesting examples. We'll move on to Leonard Fournette. If we have time, we'll address the London situation. First and foremost, I remember that if Wayne Fonts had given Eric Kramer the job, the Lions may have won more than one playoff game, but opted to give it back to Rodney Peete because of losing it because of injury. I still think that's one of the big blunders in Detroit Lions history. That's a case where Eric Kramer should have remained the starting quarterback, subsequently went under the Bears, and then they got Scott Mitchell. Won't get into the Lions quarterback situation. That's one item. Number two, I remember when Drew Bledsoe lost his job to Tom Brady. How did that turn out? That's pretty simple, isn't it? So, you know what, to me...
They both were 6th-round draft picks.
Right. No, I know. I'm with you, buddy. I'm with you. So I'm not really opposed to a guy losing the job because we'll go to the old hockey adage, you go with the hot hand and you got to ride it. So with that said...
Right.
We go with Leonard Fournette, then we'll get to London in a moment while we have like 7 minutes or so to go. Leonard Fournette, you say, is doing really good despite his offensive line issues. Elaborate on that, please, David.
Leonard came to training camp, after missing some time with the OTAs and whatnot, which started some controversy. People wanted to know whether he was still committed to playing the game. He came to training camp in great shape, and his attitude was different. And he ran hard, and he was there at practice, and you see him with the fans. And it's the evolution of and I hate to use the term child, but a younger adult who is becoming a man. He's doing the same thing on the field, like we discussed earlier. He runs with authority, especially when he's given the ball on the left side. Off the left side between the tackle and the guard. When he runs up the middle, he's getting stonewalled. He's having problems with 7 and 8 men in the box up the middle, but on the outside, he's more elusive and has more escapability. The 66-yard run that we saw on Sunday, when we were all excited in the press box, and remember, we're not supposed to do that. He galloped off the left side and took the ball 66 yards.
Right.
He then had 17 carries for 10 yards.
Right.
Because every other play was up the middle. Nothing came easy. The interior of the Jaguar line is the issue. I don't think it's necessarily at the tackle position, but he's running with more authority. He's more effective, and then he's become a really good passing threat, especially on third down. The offensive coordinator, John DeFilippo, said early on at the OTAs that the running backs were going to play a major role in the passing game, and they were going to be given every opportunity to carry the ball, especially Fournette. We didn't know who the third down back was going to be, but Fournette has become a 3-down back, which has made him a better player.
Yeah, Raquel Armstead is not a bad compliment either. We're going to get into the London stuff on Thursday night. That'll be the focal point of our conversation.
Right.
But I think Raquel Armstead has potential to be a pretty good player. Obviously, his first year in the league, he doesn't have a lot of game experience, but I still like that pick by the Jaguars.
The only thing I worry about is that, and I don't know if that was, I heard it in the press box, that Leonard's carrying a lot of the load. And they just got rid of Alfred Blue, who they released via, came off the injury reserve list, right. And he was released by the team. I'm worried that they're going to give him too many carries or too many touches, whether it's by catching the football or by running it. And I don't want them to, come December, if we're competing for a playoff berth, they've run him into the ground.
Well, I mean, if that were to happen, it would remind me eerily of what happened to Ricky Williams in Miami.
Oh gosh, yes.
He definitely.
Oh gosh.
That's why he did. That's why he left when he did, because of that reason only. So I'm with you there.
Yeah.
So why don't we go ahead and preview a little bit about what we're going to talk about on Thursday night while we have a moment, because I want to go into more depth with that. Just so you know, obviously, David Levin is going to be a regular contributor up in Jacksonville. David Levin and I do sit next to one another in the press box, so we do run things off of one another all the time. So it's really good to have a guy that you can feed off of. So what you're going to talk about...
Don't leave Candy out either, because she definitely voices her opinion with what we want to do.
Oh, doesn't she? Oh, Candy's the best.
Yeah.
She's the one who takes a beating out there on the field when it rains and when it gets hot. But what can I tell you?
Yes.
But yeah, so what we're going to talk about though on Thursday night, what I would like you to do though while you're at it, is come up with the Jacksonville Jaguars record in London to complement the payday that they get.
Right. Sure, I can do that.
Right.
I know that this is the seventh. I believe this is the seventh straight year that they've done this.
Right.
I want to say they have a 3-4 record, but don't hold me to that. I will do some research.
I'll hold you to it on Thursday night, but I
have,
won't tonight. How's that?
I have my homework assignment.
Something like that.
And we'll talk. I know we'll talk a little bit more about the reasons why London is a good thing for the Jaguars.
Oh yeah.
There's a football side to it, and then there's a business side to it.
Oh, yeah.
I think that sometimes it gets lost with these small market teams. So maybe we touch on that a little bit more.
Absolutely.
And then we talk about.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to spend some time talking about it. I was telling Dan Edwards before we get off the line that I wanted to be there so bad on the weekend, but I had neck surgery, and my doctors have said I can't travel any sort of distances for a long time because they are afraid that if anything were to happen to me, there wouldn't be enough quality care overseas. I told Dan, he said, don't worry, we'll work on it next year. And if anybody's ever worked with Dan Edwards, all I can tell you, David and I can both attest to it. He's one of the best, nicest people in the business, and certainly an outstanding public relations guy as well.
Dan's a really good guy, definitely.
You won't meet a much nicer guy than Dan Edwards in the PR. And I say that because we have a good history, and he's one of the nicest people on the planet. So, but meanwhile, yeah, you're right, David. You do have your homework assignment on Thursday, but I'm going to tell you right now, pal, great first act, right, Lewis?
Absolutely. God knows his stuff. Love the fact that he's so passionate about the team. Had a couple questions to ask him, but we'll save that for Thursday's show because I got some stuff in line for that, too.
Yeah, so meanwhile, David, great first act. We got many more acts before it's all said and done. All right, buddy? So
thanks a lot.
So thanks for being on the Sports Exchange. We will see you Thursday night, although it'll probably be a little bit later than this time. All right, buddy?
Great. Thanks for having me.
All right, you're welcome. Thanks for being on the program.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So
what are your thoughts about what he had to say?
I want to pose a question to you, and I want you to give me an answer.
Sure.
Given that the last time they met, Houston and Jacksonville, Houston beat them 20-3. Given their history in London, and given Minshew so far, this in the air of whether or not he's going to be the starter once Foles returns. Say he outperforms Watson, and they have similar kind of makeup. Although I would argue that Watson is a lot more talented overall. Just he has manifested a lot more of his ability as a quarterback.
Right.
If Minshew were to outperform Watson and say they win by a 2-touchdown score, or they win by 12, does that solidify the debate given that the Texans made all those moves prior to the start of the season, given Watson's growth as a quarterback? Does that solidify Minshew as the starter for the rest of the season?
Great question. I think that's one of the few ones that's hard for me to do. You certainly don't want to take a guy out that is winning. It is 4-4. So Doug Marrone is smarter than all of us. I don't want to deal with it any sooner than I have to. But knowing the type of individual that Nick Foles is, if he sees it's in the betterment of the team, then I could definitely honestly say that he would go along with it. Now, what would happen in year number 2?
Maybe they trade him. I mean, look.
Well, I mean,
you'd have to get salary relief. I understand that, given Foles will have 3 years and 66 left.
Right.
But look at a team like the Denver Broncos. Could they want to take on some of that contract?
Yeah, but I don't see that Foles is a good fit in Denver.
No, but we didn't think that in Philadelphia the second time around, and it worked.
Denver's situation is more dysfunctional. The reason why in Philadelphia it's different because they have a winning culture. Denver hasn't been able to get the quarterback situation right for a long time. I know where you're going with it. I agree with you quite a bit, okay? But for some reason, and you're going to find out as time you develop, you have to trust your instincts a lot of time. And I can see where there's fits, and then I can see where there aren't any fits. And for me, Denver, everybody thought Joe Flacco would be a fit, but what do you've got out there? Who's calling the plays?